My name is Doug Evans. I'm Nikki's dad, for better, for worse. Sorry, dude. I am an IT Jedi Master. All right, you wanted me to wear this too?
Yeah.
Tech.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Mind if I?
Go for
I'm going
it.
in.
Go right ahead. I feel violated.
Right? There we go.
All right. The last session was very fast, very rapid fire. There was not a lot of time for questions. Please ask questions as we go along. I am going to go fast because there is a lot of content to cover. I have some slides. I'm going to try to make it a little bit fun, but it is going to be a lot of information. Yes, sir?
What is IT and CISS?
Yes, we're going to get into that. So IT is information technology. Anything in the IT industry, I have done it at some point in my career. I have built apps for iPhones, Windows phones. I have built websites. I have done e-commerce. I have done software development for Microsoft. I have done game development. I have done server builds, PC workstation builds, networking, database design, testing. If it's in the IT world, I've done it at some point in the last 25-ish plus years. CISSP, Certified Information Systems Security Professional. That is the highest level certification you can get in cybersecurity IT world. I passed the test last week. That was a nightmare. It took about 6 months of studying, cramming a book about this big, very densely typed. And it also took years of experience. And just to be able to pass the test, you have to have years of experience. Game designer developer. I've been a game designer developer as a hobbyist / indie since 1989 when I started reverse engineering hacking video games in high school, middle school. It was the last year of middle school. So I could learn more about coding. Next slide. Do you need to do attendance?
Oh, no, I'm doing it. So you keep rolling.
I need next slide.
Oh. That's right. I am the clicker.
I can do it for you.
I'm good.
All right, so who am I and why do I think I'm semi-qualified to speak up here? In the 8th grade, my teacher, who was teaching us how to type on a keyboard, took a software development class so that he could teach keyboarding, and after 2 weeks I had exhausted his knowledge in coding, and my friend and I started reverse engineering / hacking video games so that we could learn more about coding. And doing that I learned about graphics and animation and started to learn a little bit about game design. 97 I got a bachelor's degree in computer science from St. Martin's University in Lacey. While I was there I worked for a company doing video game level design. A note about technology in the game design industry. This company I worked for had very great success doing military simulation games. And the year before I went to work with them, they chose not to change their technology. A new feature came out. VGA graphics were the thing. EGA graphics were the thing. VGA graphics just came out. So for all of you, that's like comparing a 720p HD to 4K. It was a big deal. They did not retool because they were over halfway through the development of their game. Their game bombed. Nobody bought it because it was last year's graphics. They decided to retool. They went in a completely different route, and they started building games for Disney. Their first game, the one that I helped build levels for, was an abysmal disaster. The company failed. They had to go get new jobs. So when new tech comes out that is revolutionizing the game industry, and the same thing happens across all of IT, learn it, adopt it, embrace it. But do not jump on all the shiny objects. They will just distract you and keep you from getting work done. In 2000, I worked at Microsoft. I was a build engineer, so I wrote automation that controlled hundreds of computers all at once so that software could be built, source code could be managed, and tests could be run. I had an opportunity to work with Alexei. He was the inventor of Tetris, and for 2 weeks I worked with him vetting new puzzle ideas. What I can say from that experience, Just because you're a one-hit wonder does not make you an amazing person. So check your arrogance at the door. Alexei was very full of himself because he's the one-hit wonder. He built Tetris. He can do anything great. No, he's just a one-hit wonder. And there's nothing wrong with one-hit wonders. The world is full of them. You can get great success from a one-hit wonder, but that doesn't guarantee success on your next project. I was also an unofficial Xbox consultant. I consulted with them through one of my coworkers on using heat pipes to cool down the CPU chips on the Xbox 360. I also did play testing and consumer testing advice on the Xbox remotes and on multiple video games in alpha and beta stages. Alpha is you don't want to show this to the world because it sucks and we have a lot more work still to do. Beta is, okay, we've got all the features, all the core components done. We've hit minimum viable product. Now let's start working on getting rid of all those bugs that are in there that are causing it to crash every 10 minutes. Some of those games made it to market, such as Dungeon Siege. Some of them did not. It's just the way the world works. I've done software development, networking, hardware, cybersecurity, management. I've led cross-functional teams. I've done it all. I am an inventor, an entrepreneur. I designed and built my own 3D printer. That was a challenge, cutting wood and screwing it all together so that I could print parts so I could build better pieces. E-commerce, mobile apps. I build custom PCs. If you want to do game development as a career, PC is the platform of choice because it runs all the software. Macs runs some of the software. Academic world loves Macs because Apple gives them out for free to a lot of people. And in the PC world, you need power. I run 128 gigs of RAM. I run 24 cores on my CPU, big video card, about 12 terabytes of storage space. You need a lot when you're doing serious game development work. I am a hobbyist game designer. I am hobbyist because I have not published anything yet. I have allowed my career to take me down a different path. And so I have pursued game development as a hobby. Although I am now in the Master of Arts in Game Design class with Lindenwood University, I am in my first year of 2, and I've done critical thinking, academic writing. Now I'm doing 3ds Max and ZBrush and moving into level design. I just earned my CISSP. I love scuba diving, hiking, skiing. I summited Mount Rainier. I am a mixed martial arts practitioner. I've studied Kung Fu, Taekwondo, Wing Chun, and I'm working on Wushu off and on. I love to travel the world. You gain so much knowledge just by seeing other cultures. And I am a lifelong learner. If you are not a lifelong learner and you do not want to pursue a career in IT, that's okay. If you want to pursue a career in IT, you need to be a lifelong learner. In IT, the entire technology stack changes every 5 years. Every 5 years, new software comes out, changes, the software comes out, new programming languages comes out, tech changes, you need to stay up to date. Be ready to learn. Fortunately, we've got YouTube now. Back in the day, we didn't. It was all about books. What is game design? So much more than you think. Simulations. A video game is a simulation of life. I didn't think about it that way until I started my master's degree program. And that was one of the first things I had to understand was that a video game is a simulation of life. The ludic scene is a term that I coined in one of my papers. Ludic means play. I didn't know that till I started my classes. And so within the academic world, talking about game design, game development, ludic, the term ludic shows up everywhere. So a ludic scene is when you launch a popular game and it builds a community around it. There's wiki pages that are developed. There's YouTube videos. There's how-tos. There's speed runs. There's modding. That develops this pop-up scene that forms around something that's hot and popular, and it develops its own culture within a society. And then as the interest of that starts to wane and taper off, that ludic scene goes away and a new ludic scene pops up for the next big title. Design for the player, not the designer. We want to be game designers. Why? Usually it's because we love to play games. When you become the designer, you're designing for the player. So while you initially start out with, hey, there's this great idea that I want to play and I would love, that's great, that gets you started. But then you have to start thinking about who else is going to be playing this, and then you need to tailor your game to that audience. Because if it's just you, there may be 5 other people out there like you who want to play your game. But there's this community of millions of players, and that's who you need to be able to target if you want to make any money. Suspension of reality only exists when reality is in sight. So the concept of suspension of reality is what happens when somebody is playing a game. Reality is suspended and a new reality takes over. But because we're humans and we have this knowledge of our real world, the reality that you present to them needs to mirror the real world reality, or else they stop believing it's true. The best movies can suspend that reality. The best video games can suspend that reality and keep it suspended while you're playing so that you feel like you're part of this environment, you're part of this world. The more you deviate from today's real world experience, so if you're building a first-person shooter based on 2024, you need to follow all the rules of today's world. And violating those rules will break that reality suspension. If you're building a fantasy game or you're building a future space game, you can change the rules, but you need to keep it within those genres that are generally accepted by those communities. Otherwise, you go back to breaking the rules. People don't like it when you break the rules. Indie versus big studio. Indies have to take shortcuts. Big studios, they got a lot more money, they got a lot more resources, but even as a big studio, they got to take shortcuts at times too in order to meet their deadlines. DIY versus deadlines. A lot of people just want to do everything themselves. I'm going to build all the music, I'm going to build all the assets, I'm going to write all the code, I'm going to create the UI, I'm going to do it all myself. And that's the way it has to be. That's great when you have a lot of time. But when you need 3 months to do that and you've got 2 weeks to do it, you go buy assets. That's just the reality of the world. DIY will only get you so far. To be successful in the world, you need to be able to do a mix of DIY and assets. Buy where you have to, build where you can. Some examples: 2K Games, EA, Ubisoft, Sony, Marvel, Doctor Strange, Star Trek, Halo, Starfield. I thought it was hilarious when I was playing Starfield. And I'm sitting there building my ship, and I put in this capsule for my cockpit, and I look at it for a moment, and then I go open Kitbash 3D's website, and I go to their spacecraft kit parts, and there's the exact same cockpit. So they purchased Kitbash 3D's content, they threw it in, boom, they took a shortcut. The big studios do it, the little guys do it. It's okay, but make sure you have a balance. You need to know how to work with that technology, you need to know how to work with those tools, you need to know how to build that stuff, but also know when you need to take your shortcuts. Blue Sky prioritization game design document. That is a progression. A blue sky is when you get a bunch of people together, or maybe just 2 people, and you just start throwing out ideas. Hey, we want to build a game. What's the genre? What are the features that should be in it? It's called blue sky because there's no ceiling. The whole world is open. You can throw every idea out there. Yeah, the person has to walk on his hands upside down, and after 10 minutes, the blood flow rushes to his head, so he has to take a break and switch back upright again. But then he has to flip back again before he dies because he's standing on his feet. Okay, that's a blue sky idea. You take those ideas and you prioritize them. What is important for this game? What are we just going to say, forget it, that's too crazy? What is extra features? Prioritize that. Start building out your game design document. Game design document is the most important document you create in a project. It details out everything. Agile, Scrum, Kanban, whatever, just do it. In the industry, if you are not following a methodology like one of those, you don't make it. Teams fail when they don't follow these, they implement them, they start succeeding. A typical project in the IT world has about a 30% success rate. The rest of them fail to meet one or many criteria. These methodologies help raise that rate up. Source code control is another industry standard thing. Learn to master it. If you don't know what source code control is, that's where you have a server or a cloud system where you take your project and you check it in. And then from that point on, every change to that project is tracked. The person who made that change is connected to the change. And the next person working on it can see the differences. So if Nikki checks in a file yesterday with some edits to some code and I download that file, I can use a tool to compare it, the current version to his version, and see if there were any changes. Or I can compare his version to a version from last month and I can see what edits he made. So then I can better understand the work that he's doing. I can also see if somebody made changes that weren't supposed to be made, who made them, what changes need to be fixed. If I'm testing it, I can be testing and I know that there's this bug that the developer is supposed to fix. I can look at the source code control to tell me what lines of code were edited in order to fix that bug, and then I can test the bug and I can make sure it's been edited. That leads into release management, where once you have approved all these different components, a release manager reviews and says, was the bug approved for fixing? Yes. Did the developer fix the bug and check in the code? Yes. Was the code reviewed? Yes. Was it tested? Yes. Now we're ready to release to production. Back up regularly. I had a 1.5-year long project I'd been working on, developing a bunch of automation for game development, and I didn't back it up. My hard drive failed. I lost all that work. Because I'd already done it, I was able to recover quickly, but that was still a 1.5 years of effort that just got thrown out the door. So now I back up to multiple hard drives, I back up to the cloud, everything gets backed up. Source code control helps with that. When you're using cloud-based source code control, you're automatically getting that backup. This is an example of taking game design to the next level. So a lot of people come into game design, yeah, I'm gonna just build a game. Great! What's the process you're gonna follow? Who's your target audience? How do they think? What's the demographics you're targeting? You come up with your game design concept, you move into your paradigm and your meaning, you set up the rules for your game, you identify what your game mechanics are, you present your scenario and the presentation. How is this world being presented to the end user? Is it all text-based? Is it 2D graphics? Is it 3D graphics? All of this stuff goes together into your game design document so that you're really flushing out what your game is so that you can articulate it to the next person. That comes really important when you're doing bigger games and you don't have the money to do it yourself and you need to do a game pitch to get funding. Maybe you need $300,000 so you can hire 3 more coders or a graphic design artist. The game design document is what makes that possible. This is another example where we're looking at if you're a first-person shooter or a third-person shooter, your game needs to be looking at some of these goals that a player is trying to achieve. Versus if you're in the Skyrim world and you're really into the lore and the history that they've written. That's over here in this bottom corner where you're going to put in lots of literature, lots of lore into your game. Different players have different motivations for playing games. So you need to understand what their motivations are. You need to understand which ones you're trying to target. If you're trying to target all of them, you've got to have a lot of content. Another example, just showing the different things that are looking for, like action, boom, guns, explosives, chaos, mayhem, excitement. It's fast-paced, there's surprises, there's thrills. Those are different experiences that players in that category are looking for. It is possible to have a game that bridges all the categories. That's not a problem. You just need more time and more skilled labor helping you in order to achieve it. Game design document, project management, source code control, and testing. Those are the core required components of any development project. If you're not doing a game design, you're doing functional specifications for a software program. It's the same thing, just different terms, different information goes into it. But that's the foundation for all software projects, game design, whatever. You need to have that foundational document that guides and brings everything together. Project management, equally important. So many projects fail in IT because of poor project management. Project management lets you break down all these work items into little pieces, execute on each little piece so that you can make progression towards getting to minimum viable product. Once you achieve minimum viable product, you can start working on your next level. A lot of Scrum works on like a 2-week sprint. I encourage a 1-week sprint for smaller projects. 1 week allows you to say, okay, I'm gonna achieve this minimum viable product in 1 week. Here is breaking down each one of the components necessary to hit that bar, breaking each of those down into their individual executable pieces, coding them in, developing them, creating that little character or that little crate that needs to get broken or this piece of music so that you can have an easy plan to follow and reach your achievable targets. Testing is a big deal, and most people don't understand testing. Even in software development in the real world, people don't understand testing. It is not just playing your game. It is having somebody else play your game, and it is understanding test methodologies. For instance, if you have a place where you want the player to enter a value between 1 and 5, and the player enters 10, what happens? If the player enters 10 billion, what happens? If they enter in a string, what happens? Does your game crash, or have you accounted for that and dealt with it? Those are things that testing can catch so that when your game is out in the world, it's not crashing all the time. And yeah, these are critical to success out in the world. I mean, I dealt with this stuff at Microsoft. I dealt with it at the University of Puget Sound, where it was just 2 of us doing little coding projects, but we still followed this so that we could ensure our projects were done on time and they were done correctly and they were documented. This is an example of a game design document I pulled from, just to give you an idea of the depth of content that they put into it. Over here, this green chart is showing the progression of gameplay and the challenge and difficulty. So as it's going, it starts out really high because they're teaching the player how to play the game, and then it drops down so the player can have some time to get used to the mechanics. And then it just starts ratcheting up the skill and the ability necessary in order to succeed in the game. And then there they have a map of every stage along a level where each NPC is going to be that they're going to have to interact with, and a number identifying what NPC that is, so then you can reference that number and see this NPC has this much health, it has this kind of weapons, or maybe there's a range of weapons, maybe they have a special skill or ability. And then the red zones are the high challenge areas. The bigger the red zone, the more difficult it will be for the player to pass. And then some examples of their content in the game. Professional tools of the trade. Unity and Unreal Engine are the top dogs when it comes to game development. There is a tool called RPG Maker that is very specific for making 2D RPG games that is really used a lot. All the other tools out there they're fun hobbyist tools to play with, but you're not producing some big AAA game using them. 3ds Max, Maya, Blender, ZBrush, Mudbox, Substance, Cinema 4D. These are all the top industry products. 3ds Max is the GOAT. There's nothing that beats out 3ds Max. That's just the way it is. It's been around forever. I used version 3 when I was in high school. Now there's version, I don't know, they changed the numbering to 2024. It's amazing, it's easy to learn, and it is super powerful. It is used to produce movies, it is used to produce games. Mixamo Cascadeur is an amazing animation tool. Marvelous Designer lets you build clothes. 3D Studio lets you design characters, but they're very high quality, and so you have to load them into another tool like 3ds Max and then shrink down the poly counts on them so that they can be more performant inside of a game. Other good stuff on there. Try not to get distracted by the new shiny thing. The new shiny thing will inject corruption into your projects. It will incur a learning curve, and potentially other people you're working with won't know how to work with it. Stick with the industry standard stuff. Play with the cool shiny stuff on your own time. Workflows. Hey, we didn't make it this far last time.
That's great.
Workflows are a big deal. no one tool can do everything. So the first workflow here is a process that I just used a couple weeks ago to create a new product for my class. I used DALL-E to create an image of a sign for a fantasy tavern. I took that into Microsoft Paint, I cleaned it up, I alphaed the background to it. I took it into GIMP and I further made edits to it, removing some stuff that DALL-E had put in that I didn't like. I took it into 3ds Max. I built a material for it. I extracted one of the files from that material so that I could edit that in GIMP, convert it to a raster file, which then went into 3ds Max. And so I had this little line. And then I could extrude that line to create a wooden board that I then put my picture on that had been created by DALL-E. And now I had a big wooden sign for my tavern. That's a workflow. It took me about an hour and a half to do that as I was learning and figuring out my workflow as I went. Now that I know, yes?
You said that 3ds Max is apparently very important. What does that do exactly?
3ds Max is a 3D graphic design software. So you can put a block down, you can put a circle down, you can change the shapes of that. Then you can build a material that you put on it so that it has the colors and the looks you like. And then you can animate that, you can export it to film, you can export it to video, you can load other stuff people have created into it, you can build whole scenes.
So it's like not exactly a game engine, but like an asset creator?
Correct. Yep, it's not a game engine, it's an asset creator. Blender is the free alternative. 3ds Max is around $1,500. It's not cheap. There is a free student license, so if you're interested in learning it, do so, but it does not run on Macs. It is the industry standard tool. Blender is used by indies and students and hobbyists because it's free. It's used by some smaller game design companies because it's free. It does not have all the features and capabilities that 3ds Max has, and it has a slightly bigger learning curve. Game pitch. This YouTube video is phenomenal, and Mr. Leduc can share it with you so you don't have to write it down. 30 things I hate about your game pitch. This guy's amazing. He's been listening to game pitches for his entire career. And so he tells you, hey, don't do these things. If your game has this, it's already dead. Fix it. Have a game design document, but I said ready, but don't read your game design document. When you're pitching to somebody, they don't want you reading, they want you talking. You should know your game inside out and sideways. You shouldn't need to refer to a document, but you need to have that document there because they have no clue what you're talking about, and they'll use that document to learn. What sets your game apart from every other Fortnite or Minecraft clone? Because that's what everybody does. They clone something. And that's okay, but you gotta have something that sets it apart. If all you're doing is cloning somebody else, the publishing companies are gonna ignore you because you're a walking copyright violation. And they can't handle that kind of legal flack. And don't talk about stuff that every game has. Every game has an inventory system. So don't pitch that you have an inventory system. That's assumed. Talk about what sets your game apart from everyone else's. Portfolio. So some schools require a portfolio to get in. Employers will demand a portfolio before they hire you. You need to show them that you know what to do, how to do it, and that you've done it. Art, music, games, everything in between. Everything goes into your portfolio. If you only DIY your content, you will most likely never publish a game because you don't have time to make everything except simple games. So don't be afraid to buy assets or to find free assets. There's tons of free asset content. Don't be afraid to incorporate it. Don't do only assets. Don't create an asset flip where with an asset flip, you download a pre-built project, you change only the graphical components of it, or even worst case, I saw games where people didn't even change the graphical components. They just downloaded the asset and then turned around and published it. Don't do that. That's how you get in the news as being an asset flipper. Make changes to it, build in your own storyline, make it you, and make it something that people want to play. There must be balance to the force. With everything, strive for balance. Anytime somebody is preaching in one direction or something is going in one direction, you're losing the balance. Look for the balance, a balance between assets you buy and assets you build, a balance between one type of playability and another type of playability. Try to find that balance, and that applies to everything. That's in life, that's everything. I look at it as a grandfather clock with a swinging pendulum. If it swings too far in either direction, you got a problem. Your goal is to keep it in the middle with just a little bit of movement. Include everything in your portfolio, your game design documents, blog posts, your thoughts on how you solved the critical problem that was blocking you. All that stuff can be included into your portfolio so that when you're talking to somebody, when you're being interviewed for school or for work, and they say, can you cite an example where you had to deal with this? Oh yeah, I documented that in my portfolio. Here's how I dealt with that. That goes huge. Talk about your struggles and how you overcame them. Professionalism. You will be required to jump through hoops. That's just a fact of life. It doesn't matter what job you work in, there will be required hoops that you have to jump through. Game design document, project management, source code control testing. Document your experiences with these things. Add them into your CV or your resume. That's stuff that employers look for. Dress nice for interviews, game pitches, special occasions. I got a job at Microsoft because I wore a suit.
Yep.
Literally. The guy that was interviewing me knew I had the skills. What set me apart from the other guy I was running against was that I wore a suit to the interview and I showed professionalism. And the other guy wore jeans and a t-shirt. So be prepared to dress up. Check your elitism and arrogance at the door. That's a little hit back to Alexi there. Great, you did something successful. That's wonderful, good for you. Don't let it change who you are, and don't let it make you be arrogant and full of yourself. Well, what do you mean you've never heard of me? Should I have heard of you? Why? You built Flappy Bird? Okay, that was a cool game, good for you. What'd you do next? Get an education. I'm getting a master's degree. The way I look at the certification levels and the education levels is a lot like playing a game of poker. A certificate is like having a pear in your hand. A pear is great. I got a pair of twos. I'm going to win as long as nobody else has a two or better. An AA is like having two pairs. Okay, great. I got two pairs now. I got a better chance at winning. Bachelor's degree is like having a full house. I hire bachelor's degrees over AAs all day long. They have more experience, they have more knowledge, and they know how to learn faster. Master's degree, wow, I had no clue the difference between a bachelor's and a master's until I started a master's degree in game design. And all of a sudden, I learned what ludic meant. And I learned about simulations and how simulations have existed in society for decades and generations. And it's just being applied to the game industry. Doctorate. The guy that built Among Us did his doctorate dissertation on the psychology of the player and then built Among Us around it and blew the world away with an amazing game. Vancouver, DigiPen, Evergreen. Evergreen College actually has a really good film program that is used by industry heavyweights for film design, film editing. NYU and Rochester Institute of Technology are the two top game design schools in the world. They hold number 1, number 2 spots, and nobody ever kicks them out. Full Sail has been a game design institute. They're in Florida, I believe. They've been around since the 80s, teaching people how to build games. DigiPen is like number 7 in the world. They are an amazing game design college. They set apart from traditional bachelor's degrees in that every class you take in their program is geared towards game design. So if you're taking math classes, it's for game design. If you're taking writing classes, it's for game design. If you're taking a psychology class, it's the psychology of players for game design. Most universities don't do that. Psychology class, you get general psychology, Freud, all that other stuff. But they tailor all their classes towards game design. Yes, sir.
How would you rank VFS in among that, Vancouver Film School, Game Design School?
I have no idea.
No problem.
They have a really great certificate program. That 1-year crash course is really intriguing, but all they're teaching you is the technical skills of how to use the tools. So you're missing out on this whole other world of knowledge related to the design. Lots of important resources. I reference many of these on a near daily basis. Asset stores are wonderful. There's tons of free content in them. If you start delving into Unreal Engine, you have to be using a PC, but the asset store for Unreal Engine is phenomenal after they bought out Quixel. You can build amazing real-life games using the Quixel asset store alone, and it's all free content if you use Unreal Engine. This is a world I built. This took a little while to put together. It is fully procedurally generated, and it is roughly 100 square miles in size. All I have to do now is change a few numbers, and a completely new world gets generated. The ocean, the landscaping, the trees, the rock placement. There's even, you can see there's sand along the beach line, there's rock faces. When the elevation reaches a certain point, it builds rocks instead of grass. When the elevation gets high enough, it starts to put snow in. It's all procedurally generated through code. So all I have to do is change a few numbers, and the whole thing remodels itself. This is big in game design world. This is what major studios are looking for, because they can't have you go out and hand build everything day after day, because you won't get stuff done. This Starfield is a prime example. They put a lot of work into procedurally generated content in order to be able to build such a big universe and have it still look good. This is an example of skinning a model. So I purchased a set of spaceship models for a space game I'm about halfway through building. The skins for it made it look very cartoony, the materials for it. So in Unreal Engine, I built a completely new set of material, and this is a base material, so I have variables for plugging in the different graphics. And so this one material gets applied to every single space asset I have, and then I just choose the pictures that relate to each different spaceship or space station. I don't have to rewrite this material all over again. But you can see some of the complexity that goes into making something look lifelike and real. There's a neat little trick in here, orange peel. They took a picture of an orange peel and turned it into a texture map for determining roughness on materials. And it is used across the industry anytime you're involving paint on metal, because paint on metal is never perfectly smooth. It's got a little bit of deviation to it, and so orange peel works really great at doing that. This is an example of a rough database diagram I did for an MMO that I was working on with a friend of mine. So just database design, that's a component to game development. I like to strive towards realism. That's my thing. I really like to make photorealistic stuff. This is an example of work I did using Daz 3D and a tool called Character Creator by Reallusion. Character Creator is used pretty heavily in the industry. This first guy up here with the beard, he was done in Character Creator. It lets you just put things together, adjust the skins, add details to it, and then just automatically export it out to your game engine. Makes it super easy, fully rigged, ready to play, used quite a bit in the industry. All these other ones are characters I set up in Daz 3D and then took pictures of as I prepped them for export into other modeling software to make them more game friendly. Characters in Daz 3D typically have anywhere from 2 to 10 million polygons. And when you're working in a game, you want your character to have around 10,000 polygons. So there's tricks to create material textures that recreate that detail without having the detail in your model. And this is a fun little thing I did. I love Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. And when it burned, I was really sad. So I threw a picture from one of the photographers into Daz 3D as my background. I put in a dragon with a rider that you can't really see too well. And I told them that they were lit from the photo. So all the light that is illuminating the dragon and the rider is from the fire inside the cathedral. And this, everything needs to tell a story. And so here, I've got this lady. She's got guns, weapons. She's trying to get to her big boss fight, but the bus is running late. And that's going to be kind of the story to all of you who are going into game design or who are going into any environment where you're dealing with projects. Somebody's going to be running late. There's going to be a deadline looming. You're going to be sitting there, come on, we got to go, we got to go. Or you'll be the one causing it to be late. And so then you got to pick up that slack and step forward and get the work done. Questions? Like I said, drinking from a fire hose.
So I'd like everybody to be thinking about whether you're thinking of going into the game design industry, any kind of, well here, every industry now has technology.
Yep.
You want to be a forester, all kinds of technology. So think about what skills could you focus on to get really good at that are going to open doors for you down the road that you have no idea about. We have somebody right here who's walked through those doors, and in some cases even invented the door to walk through. So you're really fortunate right now to have somebody here, and we have 10 minutes left to ask questions with clarity. So think about that, and let's take that opportunity while we're fortunate to have Mr. Evans here.
Yes.
Are there any skills you think are more valuable in the game design industry in this day and age that could be that could overshadow different skills like being more able to program versus being able to write games more, stuff like that?
Can you repeat the questions?
Yeah.
I might be able to hear them on the mics, but not.
Are there any specific skills that will set you apart in the industry? So yes, and it's not using 3ds Max. It's not writing code. It's being able to design, and it's being able to think beyond the basics that are taught in the most common books. It's being able to think at that higher level and to look at games as simulations, to understand player psychologies. That's what sets you apart. There's a number of sites available to provide information on those, and there's a number of books that are really good at that. I learned about a site called GameStudies.org, and that is a peer-reviewed journal website for game designers to publish articles. That is a great resource. It took me a little while to get up to speed because the articles written there are so high quality and the content covered is so deep that you read a paragraph and you just sit there thinking about it for a while. Yes?
When you're making a game with like a specific visual style, is it hard to find assets that match that style? Or do you think you can find
Oh, yes, it is. So when you're making a game for a particular asset style, is it difficult to find assets or create assets that match that style? Yes, it is very difficult. I own almost all of the Cinti Studios content, so a lot of work I do is driven off of Cinti Studios content. Fortunately, they have a massive library of content. It's a very polygon, low poly, cartoony style. It makes it very easy for me to do prototyping stuff. If I want to do something else, yeah, it's a challenge. One of the reasons I'm learning 3ds Max and ZBrush is so that I can create my own content, or I can take content from other sources and I can retopologize it and rematerialize it so that it matches with what I'm trying to accomplish. Do not be afraid to edit other people's work. Do not reinvent the wheel if you can at all avoid it. Yes?
Are there any games that you feel are perfect examples of well-paced game design with actually using your deadlines to your advantage?
That's tough. Practically every game that's coming to mind has blown past their original planned deadlines greatly. When I was at Microsoft, the big story was we are going to shoot for the moon, and we're going to tell the devs that they need to provide us the moon. We are going to design for an apple pie, and we are going to be really happy if the devs are able to produce a slice of pie for us. So often things get versioned, you get multiple versions. Microsoft, the big joke was nothing is good for public consumption until it's version 3. So yeah, deadlines are really tough to hit. Yeah.
When you're incorporating, like, not an asset, but like code for something, like a system, if you already have a system or something sort of in place, how do you incorporate it? Like, how do you add that code if it doesn't function with your current code at all?
Right, so if you're trying to incorporate some code that somebody else wrote into your product, how do you do that when it doesn't just plug right in? So there are a number of ways to do that. One way is called an API, an application programming interface. Hopefully the person who wrote the code built it as that, and you can just write your code to talk to it. It's a back and forth communication process. Otherwise, you take the code, you read it, and then you rewrite it into your system. So you're not reinventing the wheel by writing all the code yourself. You're leveraging the knowledge that somebody else went through, somebody else has already tested that, but then you're rewriting it into your code base, so it's part of your code. Yes?
Have you ever gotten to a part of your career where you're not exactly sure where to go? And if so, how do you figure out what to do?
Yes, that's career. Have you ever gotten to a point in your career where you're not sure where to go and what to do? So that's career burnout. Yes, been there many times. It's normal. It's okay. Don't let it define you. Find out what you are interested in and seek out the education to pursue it. I'm turning 50 this year. I am highly established in my career. I have the certifications and the experience to back it up, and I am a high-level manager. I am pursuing game design. Am I changing my career? I don't know. I'm having fun with it, though, and it's helping me overcome the stresses of cybersecurity, because cybersecurity is a very stressful environment to be in. I love game design. I always have, so we'll see where it goes. When I was at Microsoft, I was a build coordinator. So I wrote system automation all day, every day. In Microsoft, that is a highly in-demand field, and they don't ever let you leave it once they have you in it, because it's hard for them to find replacements. So once they put you in it, it's like, nope, I want you to be a build coordinator. But I want to be a software dev. No, I want you to be a build coordinator. You still get to code. You still get to develop software, but you're building automation. And that's what we're going to need you at. I ended up leaving Microsoft. One of the reasons was that. One of the reasons was the commute from here was not cool at all. Yep.
Is imposter syndrome something people in the industry deal with daily, or?
Yes. I suffer from, so is imposter syndrome something people deal with daily? Yes. I am at the top of my career. I have done everything in the industry. When I talk to my peers, they're amazed. When I look at myself, I'm like, why are you amazed? I'm just a person. I haven't published a game. I haven't written a book. Who am I? So yeah, that's a very real thing. It doesn't matter where you're at in your career, how far you've climbed. It's very real. Affects everybody. And all I can say is there are some great inspirational thinkers out there. I turn to Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar is my go-to. When I start feeling down and lost, I put on Zig Ziglar audiobooks when I'm driving into work, and I start feeling better. Yep.
What's an imposter syndrome?
What's an imposter syndrome? So imposter syndrome is where you have the skills and the knowledge to do the job, but you don't believe in yourself. You don't understand why other people should believe in you because you don't feel like you are able to compete with everybody else. That's imposter syndrome. You feel like you're a fake. Yeah.
Are there any notable projects you've worked on in your years?
Any notable projects? Do you know what Microsoft Office is?
Yeah.
I built I integrated the spell checker and the grammar checker into Microsoft Office. The team I was a part of built the spell checker and the grammar checker. Also, Microsoft Bing search engine. I worked on the team that developed the precursor to Bing. And then I was also on the team that developed the Microsoft Defender antivirus software back before they released it out. Game-wise, Dungeon Siege I contributed to. I think that's about it for game-wise, other than Xbox hardware feedback and shooting down the Tetris designers' ideas. They were garbage games. Yeah.
What's one of the most difficult projects you've worked on as a game designer?
Most difficult project. Procedurally generated worlds. Definitely the most difficult, most challenging project thus far. That took a lot of research and a lot. I was great at math when I was in high school and college. I can barely do long division now. The kids were laughing at me the other day because I needed math for my test. And I'm like, how do you do this? And they're like, what? In my procedural content, I used cellular biology mapping to define biomes and define rules between biomes so that a beach cannot be next to a tundra and a grassland cannot be next to something else. And so then when it procedurally generates, it follows all these rules. That took a lot of work for me to work out. 2-minute warning. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, let's show our appreciation.
Thank you.